Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here today on this wonderful Wednesday. Good to see everyone coming in. I know we got the chat open, and it'd be wonderful if you let us know where you are calling from, where you are attending from, as well as are you attending the Technology Summit International coming up here in a couple weeks in Irving, Texas. There's been a lot of planning and behind the scenes work that's been going on to make this show as awesome as possible and impactful. If you have your phones out, or you can go to the TSI website, you can see the full schedule of events. All of these speakers you're seeing here, either themselves or other representatives from their companies, are speaking at TSI. And there is also, if you haven't signed up yet, a registration link there with a $100 off code 2540 for you to sign up. So make sure to just scan those and check it out, and definitely excited to not only have you here today, but also have you there at TSI. So I know this is being recorded, so hello to everyone that is watching this at a later time. But thank you all here for coming here today to this Fire Service 2.0 Embracing Technology Transformation. So again, noting, I guess the slide's gone, just noting that we hope to have you here at the Technology Summit International, but here is sort of a mini snippet to what to expect in some of these breakout sessions. TSI is not meant to be a death by PowerPoint one-way conversation. It's meant to be an opportunity for forum, for collaboration, technology conversations, integration. And I want to be very clear that while TSI, Technology Summit International, has the word technology in it, yes, and we are all advocates here for technology, yes. Frankly, we all believe a lot of this technology works, and we can all agree that technology needs to be part of this modernization of the fire service. It's kind of like saying we need technology to breathe. But let me be clear that TSI is not a show about technology. TSI is about how first responders can use technology to make better decisions. A forum and an opportunity for first responders, industry partners, entrepreneurs, academics, government to come together to really understand these core problems and continue to find ways to address these real problems. And we need to question, what are the real impacts of this technology on the fire service, if at all? We have some conversations today, especially when thinking about artificial intelligence, that if we don't even understand exactly what we're doing, how can we expect this silver bullet of a new technology to solve our problems? It can't. We need to be very meticulous, careful, and cautious as we're talking about these new technologies. For example, consider infrared cameras as an example and source of inspiration. Thinking about the time of when it was first introduced in the 90s, to the time it took to create training manuals, to widespread adoption, to in all of that process, to how do we look at this as speeding up tech adoption? That's something we'll be talking about TSI. I also heard a great analogy yesterday. And when thinking of when you start a puzzle, when you start at the edges and work inward, and we sometimes say tech is a piece of the puzzle. Instead, I want everyone to be thinking about here and at TSI, technology needs to be at the heart of the puzzle, at the middle of the puzzle, and we build out from there, from the planning, the training, the integration, the tech management, all those things. And lastly, TSI is not about vanity metrics. It's not about being there and looking cool on social media, and not just talking about developing tech to develop technology because it's cool. I mean, we still don't even use some of the best technology like seatbelts, for crying out loud. So what I want at TSI is we need to bring technology into the fire service to focus on helping first responders make better decisions and support their mission. And if you're here for the fame and the Instagram likes, you can leave now. Frankly, we don't want you at TSI. However, if you have a burning desire and you have this passion to help first responders be better, faster, safer at their job, I want you there. So, but enough of that. We got 4 awesome presentations. Continue to fire up the chat about where you're from, who you're calling from, and give us a conversation. So we're going to go 4 rapid fire conversations, put questions in the chat and in comments, and then we're going to go into a panel. So without further ado, and enough of me talking for now, we're going to introduce Sai Narayan, who's a technology strategist at Microsoft. Sai Narayan is currently a technology strategy director of the Microsoft state and local government team, specializing in public safety and justice, with 18 plus years of experience in the public safety industry and expertise in fire, EMS, and 911 technologies. He currently works with government operations, fire service, law enforcement, and justice partners in envisioning the art of the possible and how technology can be a force multiplier and assist with organizations with intergovernmental agency data sharing, cybersecurity, and collaboration. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Sai, and then we'll go the rapid fire presentations afterwards. Sai, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate it. And it's just an honor and a privilege to be here with my fellow panelists on this discussion here. And very excited about participating at the Technology Summit in December. I personally believe this is a game changer of a conference that honestly brings together technologists and practitioners together under one roof, because traditionally, you've either used to go meet technologists separately or you meet the practitioners separately. This is a great opportunity to meet the technologists, the architects, the GIS personnel, the data analysts, and all the practitioners in the fire service and public safety at large under one umbrella, and really have impactful conversations that really matter the most. And it is a conference that I look forward to the most, because I also end up learning a lot, walking away with an amazing amount of ideas and thoughts and in areas that I probably need to contemplate and look at how technology can be that force multiplier that you mentioned. So thanks, Kevin, for the introduction. I'm going to quickly share my screen and hoping everything shows up as expected. And appreciate the introduction. So this is kind of a teaser to our big session at TSI in December. With my fellow presenter, Chad Wallace, who heads our worldwide public safety and justice practice around emergency response. Our topic's really around AI revolution in public safety. Honestly, it's really about the AI revolution, and it truly is just a Microsoft perspective, or our perspective of how we see technology, and AI specifically being that catalyst. And, the first question that most people ask is Microsoft in public safety? Like, wait, what? Because most people know Microsoft as a Word, PowerPoint, Excel company, or a Teams, or Surface devices and such. But believe it or not, over the years, Microsoft as an organization has been underpinning a lot of the technologies that you use on a day-to-day basis, whether you are a frontline firefighter who is putting your life in harm's way to save a life using a mobile data computer or any of the technologies and tools, or it be an analyst or an officer or anyone. Believe it or not, a lot of it underpins a lot of our technologies, and our practice around public safety really focuses around these three areas, empowering agencies in doing their best work, improving operations, and protecting our communities. And in that, one of our pillars is transforming emergency first response. And these are some of the areas that we kind of touch upon, everything from community engagement to providing technologies and tools and platforms for coordinated first response, to modernizing a lot of the 911 operations in the call centers. And lastly, intelligent command and control. That's where a lot of the AI conversations are starting to happen. So I'm going to kind of jump right into the elephant in the room. Now, everyone's talking about AI, and I'm sure you're like, a lot of people online are probably having AI fatigue as well. And trust me, you're not alone, where I feel like in the last year, we have ingested so much information about AI that it just keeps coming. It keeps coming at a rapid pace. And what's interesting is everyone's talking about generative AI in the last year, but AI as such has been around since the 50s, right? Since the time that, we wanted machines to replicate human intelligence, or at least, attempt to replicate human intelligence, to the time when machine learning became a thing, where, started to learn from existing data and improve upon predictions or operations, to deep learning, where now you start using neural networks to make deep decisions. And now this new form of AI has really sparked the conversation for a variety of reasons. One, because it's accessible to everybody. So with the advent of ChatGPT and other tools, everyone had access to these tools and technologies. And so generative AI is a different kind of an AI. It's all around creating content, whether it be written content, visual content, images, or creating even code for developers to build technologies. And believe it or not, I call it folding time. This is a very interesting statistic that I read. It's like it took mobile phones 16 years to get to 100,000 users, and guess what? ChatGPT just took 3 100 million users, sorry. And it took ChatGPT 3 months to get to 100 million users across. And that talks a little bit about the impact or sort of the gravitas of accessible technology that generative AI is, and how much of an impact it is, or a buzz that it has created in the last year. And in our own journey with Microsoft, and we'll talk a lot more at TSI in detail about this, started back in 2016 when our CEO Satya published a paper, I think it was in the Slate magazine, around the concept of responsible AI. And through that, we formed a committee back then, an Aether committee, that did a lot of work around putting some grounding principles around what does responsible AI look like. And today that process has continued to evolve into the Office of Responsible AI, which now gets input from many stakeholders, including the public, and it continues to be refined because, again, one of the things we'll talk about at TSI is all AI good? Where do you draw the lines? What is the contextual use of artificial intelligence? Where, how does it need to be anchored around some responsible practices? And then again, we look forward to having that dialogue with you at the Technology Summit. And I kind of leave you with a couple of thoughts, right? Traditional first response was, hey, you got a call that came in. You used a bunch of technology to take the call. You used a whole bunch of technology to receive the call information, distribute that to your firefighters and your first responders. And then you used a bunch of technology in a fire truck or a Suburban and shared that information between individuals, and life goes on. But today's public safety ecosystem is far more complex than that, with the fire service becoming an all hazard service, with the number of types of incidents that are coming into play and the various touch points and interactions that the fire service has across the world today. It's extremely complex because now you're not just talking about your own agency, your department. You're talking about a unified command and control. You're talking about interagency collaboration. You're talking about partnering with other public safety entities. And so with that, open up a whole bunch of plethora of tools and technologies that surface up, whether it be using drones and video information for search and rescue or other kinds of operations, or whether it be transcription translation services for, understanding auditory data and making some meaningful sense out of it. And so as the job at hand, if you will, becomes complex, the possibilities start opening up around the use of technology in enabling the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. And I have a couple of examples here. And again, we will dig a lot deeper at TSI. One of them is, hey, how does an AI-enabled common operating picture look like? Where you're not just throwing a whole bunch of tools and technologies at firefighters in the front line. Now, what if AI could assist in surfacing up the information that's absolutely pertinent at the right point of time? And what does that right time look like? And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Another area is, how does some of the generative AI components allow for summarization or note-taking? I know there's a lot of note-taking in first responders today, where you're having to enter reports and you go into the RMS, or you go into other tools and enter a whole bunch of information. Are there opportunities for automatic content summarization based on either audio information or other sources of information, so you're not having to do all that manually? And again, we'll dig into that at the conference. And so essentially all this is pointing at is using AI as a co-pilot or an information assistant to the first responder. And under the guy, and I just want to make absolutely clear that AI is not going to solve all problems or is going to take over and do everything that you probably do on a day-to-day basis. We look at AI as a co-pilot. You are still the pilot. The idea that the human element is the most important element in the day-to-day operations, because at the end of the day, it's the human that puts his or her life in danger to save another life. And the last thing I want to say is, I want you to think about these things as you make your trip to Texas. Is if you haven't thought about it, or if you haven't thought about, how does my organization, how is my organization going to leverage AI? These are some things to think about. What are your organization's goals of using AI? Certainly worth having the conversation with the right folks within your agency. What are some pain points you think AI can address? Sky's the limit, right? Because I personally believe in the art of the possible, and sky's the limit because you start with that and then you start becoming a realist around what's possible. What are your organization's current capabilities in terms of AI? You may or may not have the skill set, or you may have a lot of skill set that is distributed that you can leverage or tap into. Does your organization have a data strategy in place? And if not, it's perfectly okay. All these questions, even if you don't know or not clear, it's perfectly okay. At least it gives you a baseline of where you're starting. And lastly, do you have the necessary infrastructure and resources to support your AI initiatives, or what? And we can talk more about what those resources are, or what those support structures would look like as you embrace this era of AI. And again, I want to leave you with that. We'll continue the conversation at TSI. I want to thank the IAFC for this opportunity, and I'm going to toss it back to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Sai. And this is the big thing about the breakout sessions. It's rapid fire. It's boom, 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 and we're going. And we want it. You want it to be as two-way dialogue as possible. So if you got questions or ideas, put them in the chat. We want to hear your thoughts, and we're going to get to that in a second. So next on the stage, we have Sarah Hay, the brand director from IDEX Fire and Safety North America. Sarah specializes in enterprise e-commerce and customer experience. She's an accomplished commercial leader with comprehensive experience, driving digitizing strategies, generating improvement in customer engagement and revenue growth. She's currently managing the IoT Connected Solutions platform for IDEX Fire and Safety. And with over 12 years of experience supporting emergency responders, she partners with members of the fire service and channel partners to deliver innovative solutions so they can accomplish their mission safely and effectively. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I'm pleased to represent the IDEX Fire and Safety team as we support the fire and rescue community. We are looking forward to meeting all of you at the Tech Summit here in December and learning from you how we can help. So let's get started. But before we get into a sneak peek of what you'll learn at the Tech Summit, I'd like to explain to you a little bit about IDEX and IDEX Fire and Safety, introduce you to the brands that make up this segment. By first just highlighting very quickly that IDEX is our parent company, and basically their specialty is supplying highly engineered solutions that you likely have you've experienced in your own personal lives in some way. It's made up of 50 diverse businesses across the globe, and IDEX is specially focused on providing high-performing and highly engineered solutions that help improve lives. And some examples of where IDEX may have touched your life is potentially if you've ever had a doctor order a DNA test for you to predict some type of risk or disease or to determine a course of treatment, that lab may have used equipment contained by our team at the Health and Sciences Division. If you've ever had chocolate, it's quite possible that that chocolate passed through the internal gear pumps of our Viking team in our fluid and metering segment, and used very popular at candy factories. And probably the brand in terms of where you're most familiar with in the fire and rescue space is Hearst Jaws of Life. So if you've ever been on scene or experienced the Jaws of Life, the Hearst brand is probably most familiar to you. But it's not just Hearst. We have a lot of other brands. I'll share that with you in the next slide. But as far as IDEX Fire and Safety being a segment of IDEX, we really came together for a particular reason. One is we are extremely committed to empowering first responders to save lives, including their own. And so it's our job to hear from you and how you're doing your jobs and helping to provide those solutions. Here are some brands that are probably familiar to you. For more than a century, as you'll see, the customers of IDEX Fire and Safety have relied on our equipment and service. In North America, you're probably most familiar with Hale, Akron Brass, Weldon, Hearst, and Class 1. And you'll see some of our other sister companies around the globe have been providing solutions for fire and rescue for quite some time, more than 150 years, actually. So though we have 100 years of tradition, more than that, we don't let that stop us from thinking about the future of safety. So my question to you, when you think about the tradition that's normally associated with the fire and rescue space, how can we overcome that desire to maintain tradition over safety in our departments? And I would love to hear from you in the chat as we're going through this, or a little bit later, some ideas where you've had success in helping to change that mindset of holding on to tradition versus moving forward. My slides are advancing a little faster than me. Let's go here. So an example of where we've taken the best of the brands that you've been familiar with for many years is in the water flow space. And so if you added in all of our years of experience, it's more than like 500 years in water flow experience. We've have extensive investment and resources on our team across the world, some with personal firefighting experience, and others of us have had lots of exposure and time spent in the field understanding the challenges that you all face on the fire ground. So an example of that is with our SAM system. We've taken our tried and true equipment such as valves, electronics, and pumps from Akron, Class, and Hale and bring those together into an integrated solution called SAM. So let's talk a little bit more about that as we move along here. Additionally, to water flow control solutions, we are also be able to provide critical equipment on the fire ground and emergency rescue scene. We understand the challenges of managing healthy equipment and making sure it's in good condition and ready for action. So you'll see more and more of the IDEX Fire and Safety portfolio of equipment connecting to the Captium Data Hub so you can be informed of the health of your equipment. Brands such as Hurst, E3 Connect, and water flow systems provided by Hale and Akron Brass are intelligently providing data via the internet and Wi-Fi and cellular connection to our Captium Data Hub so that you can always be prepared for the next emergency. So we'd like to learn more about ways we can partner with you to influence adoption of innovation in our space. So as we continue to share more about the things that we're doing to provide innovative solutions, we'd like to hear how we can partner with you to learn more and provide even better options. We know you understand that, and we understand that you need reliable equipment so you can do your job best. And so from an emergency responder needs, we know that, let's see, my slide's not advancing. Here we go. A little bit of technical difficulty. All right. So we understand that you need solutions that will help with your optimized emergency response, that you're constantly being asked to do more with less, and that you have to continue to maintain and ensure safe communities. From our involvement and hands-on experience listening to folks every day in the field, we hear common challenges and themes across the board. On the emergency scene, examples include inconsistent water pressure, missed calls for water, human variability, and high stress. These are things that we hear repeatedly in many emergency scene situations. At the station and the office, we know you're faced with budget and personnel constraints, recruiting shortages, lack of mechanical skills and those that are joining the team. You're also managing a diverse fleet of equipment and vehicles, and you're being pressured to maintain asset tracking and data. So I'm sure you can all relate to a few of those things that I just shared. And you're starting to see some of the amazing technological advances that are available to us. Cy was sharing a few of those things just earlier, and we can see the vision we can see how technology can help make our world more efficient. However, that path to get there can seem very difficult and daunting. Maybe it's similar to climbing like Mount Everest. If you can imagine that seeing the goal being so lofty and difficult to get to can cause us perhaps to be comfortable and maybe just not make the effort to change. It's just easier to stay where we are. So I'd like to encourage you all to think about is, let's, instead of trying to get to the top of the mountain in one quick climb, but think about just getting to base camp first and then taking the next incremental step right after that. So what are some practical ways that you think we can advance? How have you personally been able to successfully change the hearts and minds of those in your crew, at your department? What are some ways that you have been able to take small steps towards preparing for the next generation and the future of your team and your crew? At TSI, attendees are going to learn more about SAM, which I talked about a little bit earlier. You're going to hear from the inventor, a pump engineer who had a better idea on how to make pump operations easier, safer, and faster. This photo here is an example of how a pump panel might look with SAM. It helps to simplify the operation and minimize manual control. It's an integrated water flow control system that manages vehicles' pumps, tanks, intakes, and the discharges. What the benefit is it allows the pump operator to focus on the fire ground and the crew and help them to be effective and stay ahead of the crew's needs. And this design that you see here, this SAM system would be what you might expect on a new purchased truck. We also have an option that is available for retrofit on existing trucks. So I'm just going to play a quick video here so you can get a sneak peek at our system called SAM Boost, which is helping to address some of these fireground challenges.
Take water flow control in hand with SAM Boost, the newest addition to the IDEX Fire and Safety family of SAM water flow systems. SAM makes attacking every fire ground simpler, faster, and safer. Charge the line, check the tank level, and see the hydrant connection, all at the nozzle. Know your flow with SAM Boost.
Additionally, we want to share with you at TSI about IoT-enabled devices by sharing more about our Captium system. It's a smart rescue tool and vehicle platform that's going to help you keep connected and informed so you know that your equipment's always ready for the next emergency. Thanks, Jeff. We look forward to seeing you at TSI and learning more about your challenges and how we can help. And we are excited to join you in engineering the future of fire and rescue.
All right. Sarah, thank you so much. Those videos came through clear. Glad that worked out. Like I said, this is all rapid fire. Sarah, thank you so much for the presentations there. IDEX will be given a few main stage and participating in some breakout sessions. So excited to have you, and thank you, Sarah, again for that. Next, we have I may butcher it again, Bart van Leven. Bart van Leven. Bart combines more than 20 years of experience as an operational firefighter at various fire departments in the Netherlands, with running 20 years of leading Netege BV, which is a business delivering smart data for smarter firefighters. This unique combination gives them the opportunity to identify relevant research and its application in real-world scenarios. Bart, the floor is yours.
Let me share my screen here. There we go. So I briefly want to talk about AI in emergency response, and then particularly about the elephant. So I'll quickly do an introduction of myself and why I'm interested in this field. You can follow me on, this used to be my Twitter handle. I don't do Twitter anymore, but on Mastodon, new social network. So curious to see if this brings anything up. I run a company called Netege. We do smart data and smarter firefighters. Been around in the field of fire data since probably 2003. Mainly interested in data standardization and data infrastructures. I've been very active on the OGC and W3C data standards communities. And we've done some interesting projects for NFPA, for example, on data standardization. Since 2022, I'm also one of the Situational Awareness Matters certified master instructors, where we help organizations see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. We train people in high risk, high consequence environments, and we have a large customer base, obviously, in the fire service, to help people understand on how their decision making is influenced by the limits of their brain and how their decision making actually works to begin with. On top of that, I have a guest researcher position at the Free University in Amsterdam on the user-centric data science group, where we look at how users and data can work together, which is co-located with Human Hybrid Artificial Intelligence Lab, which is specifically aimed through a European project on how can humans and AI actually work together. And as if I'm not busy enough, I currently serve as a captain at the Amsterdam Fire Department. Been there for 22 years and now run, together with 6 of my co-captains, a fire station in the southern part of the city. All these things and all my interest have come together somewhere in 2009 as my fear. I'm afraid that something will happen to me or either one of my colleagues, and in the end we will figure out that all the information that was needed to prevent this incident from happening was actually known within our own organization or the organizations that we partner with, or the cities or the local governments. When I made this first statement in 2008, it was in the advent of open data, and data sets were just emerging, and people saying, oh, we should share data. And I thought, why are we not sharing more data with firefighters? And it came to that point because of the 4 minutes that we have when we run to an incident scene in Amsterdam, we have 4-minute response times. I started to realize there's so much stuff I need to think of that needs to be read from books, etc. Can we do that smarter and quicker? So I started coding, the nerd as I am, and I ended up, you can see I was a lot younger, almost 14 years ago, a lot less gray. This was the first information display at one of the fire stations at the Amsterdam Fire Department back then. And since then, I've been going around the world and talking about some of these principles, but always having a clear look at, great that we can bring more and more information to the front line, but can we actually cognitively deal with this? Can we actually deal with all this information? And now when we have these large amounts of data, suddenly people say, oh, well, AI is going to solve this. And obviously we heard Nash talk about what AI can do. And I really like all these discussions about AI. But what I don't like is that we do not talk about the elephants in the room. And I briefly want to touch upon 4 elephants, which I'm going to talk about at TSI more in depth and some of the solution directions I see. Also, that's in a paper I've written and the work that I've been doing with NetEdge and SA Matters. So let's first talk about the first elephant, that's data quality and quantity. And the statement I stole from somebody at IBM, the road to IA goes through IA. So the road through artificial intelligence goes through information architecture. And the information architecture is about finding the right data, getting to that data, and understanding the data models and definitions within that data, and then be sure that you can actually reuse this data. And these are, for the people who are aware of them, these are the FAIR data principles. From the projects I did so far in the fire service, either all of them or some of them are really complicated to achieve, either from the data we want to gather from organizations we partner with, or even from the data we use in our own organizations. These 4 questions are very hard to answer from time to time. And on top of that, if you want to make AI really work, it needs a lot of training data. And we are not really good at recording data to begin with, let alone the quality that is needed to make AI work properly. I did a recent test with somebody in the Dutch fire service who used ChatGPT to ask questions about some of the procedures we used. And the answers were remarkable because the positive features of this procedure actually were capable of being answered by ChatGPT, but the downsides were never documented. So ChatGPT couldn't answer and just made up a question or an answer by itself from a biological procedure, which was really, really funny, completely unrelated. So we need to step up on data quality and quantity if we really want to leverage AI. And I'm aware this is not the sexy part. Everybody wants to do the end games, like let AI do the cool stuff. But this is not what needs to be done right now. Then the second elephant, it's the outliers. AI is, the current stage of AI is really good at going and helping you sort of finding the common denominator. But the fire service exists to deal with the outliers. If you would run 30 of the same incidents within a couple of months' time, you would find new policies or codes and standards to prevent these incidents from happening. That is not what we do. We always run to the outliers. We always run to the locations where people did stupid stuff, which is not capable to be captured in data. And when people say, I can predict incidents with data and AI, I'm going to give you a couple of incidents that I've been to. I will never believe that you can actually predict them with AI. On top of that, incidents are less frequent and more complex. And I just told you, we need a lot of training data to have these systems to actually work properly. So these incidents are getting less frequent, and the ones we get start to become more and more outliers by themselves. And then there is we're on the current wave, especially here in Northern Western Europe, on new technologies from the energy transition, where we actually have no idea what they bring to us. And I've seen some reports from the US on large energy storage facilities and these kind of things. Solar panels on roofs, we have no idea yet how that behaves. So the incidents get more complex. And then obviously, climate change is going to bring unknown challenges as well. How will that look for the fire departments? And that's what was mentioned before. Fire departments are nowadays all hazard mitigating institutions, and climate change is definitely going to be one of them. We haven't seen that before, so there's no training data other than that we can make up. Then the third elephant, the personal context. if you want to have AI help me make better decisions, you need to understand my own experience, education, personality, because that determines how I make my decisions. And even though that I'm aware of that that's relevant for my decision making, I do not even know myself how I really make decisions, because that's a neurological process we do not really yet understand. And then on top of that, if you want to train that, we need to track personal data. That has all sorts of privacy issues. But most fire departments cannot accurately tell which people have been to which incidents in what role and what their decisions were and their process in this decision making at that incident. So let alone that we can actually learn from it and that we can have systems assisting me in my decision making. And actually technology can be a burden. And the thing is that we are so intrigued by having AI assist us in this process, but like Kevin started, we don't even use seatbelts in the fire service. The simplest technique to keep us safe, we're not using. On top of that, everybody knows if you're in the fire service or not, smart technology is often ignored. If you take your satellite navigation system in your car or on your phone and you're going home, there's a fair chance that no matter what the system says, the last couple of miles, you ignore it because you've been doing that over and over again. Think of that in combination with an industry who says 150 years of tradition not impeded by progress. How can we create technology that understands my personal context, that is capable of intervening with my thought processes to feed me with important information? That's a challenge which I think is huge, and we have no idea where to start yet. And then probably the biggest elephant for me is the ethical and legal consequences of using AI. It was in the first presentation, it was briefly mentioned. So who's responsible for the results? Can we explain the results? And do we have legal frameworks in place? And I want to talk to some of the researchers on AI. Some of them say, my prediction and this system is going to be 89% right. And say, well, if in the 2% I make a decision based on the outcome of your system and people die, who's responsible? And even if they say we can put on a legal framework that sort of waives your responsibility if you use this technology, I still need to live with the fact that I made a decision where 2 people got killed. And to me, I think it now is the time, especially within the fire service, to have proper conversations about the ethical consequences of using AI in our profession. This is not a statement that I do not want to use AI. It is that we need to have this discussion up front and not when things went horribly wrong. Because people who have been working with technology in the fire service know that if you start using a technology and it's not functioning properly, firefighters just going to throw it away and never going to use it again. And that would be a shame. So what are my goals? My goals is to steer up the conversation with these 4 elephants and to have proper conversations and to convince people that we need to step up and fix the data quality. We need to understand that we're dealing with outliers. So what we try to achieve with AI on prediction and accurately telling what we try to do is not what we want to do. Understand that if you want to make true decision improvements tools, you need to start capturing the personal context of the people you want to help. And on top of that, we need to talk about the ethical and legal consequences of the technology we're going to put on the front line. So how's my fear? More than 15 years ago, I started talking about my fear, and not using the data is not part of my fear. We're now overflowing people with data. And we need to look at this, that we not make this too technological. We need to keep an eye on the human side. And my fear right now is that we completely use the human side of our profession out of sight, and we should not do that. So I look forward to having this discussion on stage with you in a panel. And with that, Kevin, I'd like to throw it back at you.
Bart, thank you very much. Like I said, rapid fire here. The presentations are running a tiny bit long. We're still going to have some time for the panels at the end. We have one more presenter, a dear friend of mine, John Tippett, the Director of Fire Service Programs at the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation. John is an experienced leader with a demonstrated history of working in the public safety industry. He's skilled in managing organizational change, government operations, emergency management, and fire management. Strong risk management orientation professional with a master's degree in focus in emergency services management from Columbia Southern University, and all around just a great dude. John, welcome to the stage. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I really appreciate the opportunity to that cleanup here with the other presenters. It's a privilege to be with them. So I'm going to jump right into the share of a presentation, and it dovetails quite nicely onto what Bart was talking about. And the focus of the presentation I'll be talking about is about orienting. We have spent an enormous amount of time on the American Fire Service in particular, I think not taking into account that we are more accidentally successful than intentional. And through a combination of rethinking the thought process, I've been a student of crew resource management and situational awareness since 2001. And it's time, I think, for us to marry that up with some of our technologies. We see what's happening in the aviation industry, commercial aviation, how well things are going there. And I think it bodes well for us. So trying to get a pick up here. There we go. So the American Fireground. I'm sure all of our viewers here are familiar with what's going on. It's a chaotic scene. I dimmed down the vocals here, or the audio, so you can hear what's going on. But within a few minutes, you go from having the ability to feel, hear, sound, taste, touch, having all of your senses available to you, to a place where none of that is available anymore. And that becomes problematic as you move into the incident scene and make entry into the structure. So once we get into the building, this is about what it looks like. And then the question becomes, what next? So every once in a while, there's a glimmer of hope. There's a bright, shiny object there that gets your attention, but basically it stays black. And we move into different platforms and rotations and directions. And we have gone from one story to 2 stories, or we've gone into a basement. And while we think we know where we are, we don't necessarily completely understand our environment and what we've gotten ourselves into. So even in a situation like this, second tab where the fire is primarily under control, visibility is limited, and we could be in deep trouble pretty quick. The game-changing event for every fireground commander, as Bart mentioned, was when you're lost, when you're confused, where you are, and you make your transition. We make our transmissions where we are, and we don't exactly know how to communicate that effectively.
Tower 7 red deploy from the Charlie side. You've got a mayday from 1-1. All units hold here. Charlie command, priority message. Firefighter Flynn fell through the floor. He's on the hose line. He's down the hose line and could not get pulled back up. Units are inside right now, searching for him. Three number 4 stores. Possibly 10 steps. Go left.
In each of those steps, when the Mayday is sounded, primarily we have 2 tracks. There's the track of the incident commander, then there's the track of the rescuers. And what we're hoping to propose or have as part of our discussion is entering into the conversation, the 6th factor of what NIOSH used to live as the top list as the top 5. And that 6th factor is orienting. And when we talk about orienting, it's not about knowing the X, Y, and Z axis of where you are in the building, but are you truly in touch with the reality of the situation? So when we talk about orienting, there's a couple of different factors there. I'm going to kind of speed through this so we can get to our Q&As. There are the human factors, which is the incident commanders and the rescuers and how they interact with each other. And then there's the technology that's come into place. Over time in the American Fire Service, we've elevated from personal pass devices that we'd had to activate ourselves. That didn't work so well. Then we got into pack trackers on our SCBA. Then we got into thermal imagers. Then we reduced the size of thermal imagers. And then now we have some emerging technology that's out there that are starting to crack that code of difficulty. We're looking at a prototype here from a company out in the Chicago area. Kevin can speak to them at a little bit greater length, but I had the opportunity to watch their technology. Currently, they are working with a device that is a little bit like the one you see in the circle. And the goal is to get it to a size right around the size of a microphone, a radio microphone, so it sits on your coat or some other portion of your body, the firefighter's body, and can tell the incident commander exactly where you are if something goes wrong. Ideally, if we get people into discussing the and accepting the ability and the concept of orienting being a primary factor, then I think that given what we've seen happen in other industries that are relying quite heavily on their technologies, without forgetting about the human factor and the human responsibility and the human effort to try to accomplish things, that we will reduce the situations where firefighters get into trouble. And if when things go, even when they go right, they've gone wrong, then we will be better prepared and equipped to get them out of trouble. So with that, hope to see everybody at TSI in Irving, and I'll turn it back over to Kevin.
John, thank you very much. And if all of you, my fellow speakers, want to put your cameras on, the goal of this is kind of a little bit of organized pandemonium. And I don't want to go too much past the hour. We got at least another 9 minutes. Maybe we'll go a couple minutes over. This conversation could go 100 which ways. And there was one question in the chat, and I want to get to that in a second. But I want to talk about technology change management and what are some kind of maybe sort of examples and ideas. And Bart, you mentioned if we talk about the seatbelt example. But to me, I do believe that we have all the technology we need to be able to solve most of these problems. But oftentimes it is a training, it is a standard, it is a human element that's sort of in the way. And so kind of this for just maybe 2-3 minutes, everyone kind of giving their thoughts on change management and integrating technology effectively, sort of a statement, and I'm trying to elicit a response. Any thoughts in particular specifically about change management and how we can work with first responders and other stakeholders to effectively get technology integration within public safety? Throw it to you first, Bart, if you want to give any sort of hot take on that.
The first thing, when you started on sort of starting with this question, the first thing that came into my mind when I started this project with the screen you saw in my presentation, the then second in command of the Amsterdam Fire Department told me, just go and do it. Don't make it a project or it dies. And currently it's still not an official project, but it's still in use at the Amsterdam Fire Service. And I think that we tend, if we want to do new things, we tend to put too much red tape on it.
Sai, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with Bart. I think change management is also about identifying change agents within your organization. And those change agents typically don't come at the leadership level only. They come at a fire station. It's an engineer, it's a captain, it's someone who wants to push the envelope with, wanting to do things a little differently, more efficiently. And so encouraging that culture, right, is very important as part of that. And I think B is, how do you take that culture and then develop those change agents or build a user group or a community around that and champion that so that it bubbles up bottom up. For me, change management, honestly, it's bottom up, because anything top down is looked at very differently than anything comes up bottom up. So that's just my perspective.
Well said. Well, Sarah, then John, and then we'll switch questions. Sarah?
Yes, I would just say for those who are entrepreneurial and are interested in trying new technology, is try before you buy. So if there's any way you can experiment and trial things in a small scale before forcing the change across your entire department, we've seen a lot of success with that, departments who have that experimental mindset.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. And John, any thoughts? Kind of, you gave some examples of technology that's maybe failed or it sounded great, but didn't really do anything. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the key to any improvements in any industry is not thinking of them in terms of change, but thinking of them in terms of progression. So rather than talk about the concept of change management or something like that, it would be about progression leaders, not change managers. And I'm right in line with what Sai was talking about. And I think Bart is a great example. Stuff that bubbles up from the people that use it tends to have the best outcome. And Kevin, just on a recent visit to Ascent, there was a trial being performed. Something wasn't working at the trial fire department. They made recommendations, and the engineers were savvy enough and nimble enough to be able to make the correction on the fly. Bart talked about stuff that doesn't work, and we suffered through all of it ourselves, like with the PASS device. It was going to be the thing to save firefighters' lives if they remembered to turn them on. So then we integrated them into the SCBA. Now they go off at such a rate that people just ignore them because they accidentally activate and nobody's paying attention to them. So I think we can take some great lessons from our aviation industry folks, where they made sure they didn't forget about the human being and how the human interacts with the technology. Can't live without it, but you also can't be left to think that technology will be your ticket out of every issue.
Bart?
Yeah, this quote I wanted to add. I think it's Taleb uses it in his book. The true innovation is the removal of the unnecessary. And sometimes I do think we just bring more stuff in because it looks cool, but it's not removing anything. It's just adding another burden. So true innovation is the removal of the unnecessary. That should be your tagline if you want to do these kind of things.
Well said. You can mic drop it there and end it, but we got a couple more minutes. I think a big thing, and just maybe talking about AI for a second and just kind of data in general. There was a question. Thank you, Kevin. Another Kevin, great name, by the way. He asked, how will you manage data security, compliance, HIPAA when using AI? And I know there's, Bart, you had that one slide of the HIPAA, the elephant slide of all the different kind of these big things we need to look at, and the ethical side of it, the legal side of it. But this is a big concern for citizens of the community, aspiring firefighters, fire chiefs, city officials, state officials, federal officials, all that. So maybe I'll throw it to you, Sai, first, and then kind of round robin from there.
Sure. I think it's a loaded question. So I'm happy to deep dive on this at TSI. And I kind of really loved Bart's setup in terms of, the areas that you look at. And I would say, anything. So underpinning AI is data, right? Period. Like without data, there's no AI. Let's just say that right out loud. Data is a shared responsibility as well. So it's your team and the technology provider who is providing whatever technology it is, whether it be a tool, or operating picture tool, or whether it be a cloud platform. Some questions need to be asked, like what is the data being accessed or processed? Where's the data hosted? Who needs access to the data? Those are fundamental in helping determine a lot of these answers to some of these questions. And then you layer in the AI components. Hey, how are the AI models being deployed? What kind of AI is being used? Is it just like cognitive services and stuff? Or is it more generative AI where it's AI creating information and content? A lot of that then determines what kind of security components you need to have in place, compliance you need to have in place, and what other frameworks need to be deployed in order for the responsible use of that data and AI in place. And so from a Microsoft perspective, we have a portal. It's called Service Trust Portal. You can look it up. It has a lot of the, regulatory compliances and information around how the cloud services are able to utilize data and a lot of the AI components in a manner that, is compliant and provides the security controls in place. But again, happy to deep dive this in person at TSI.
Bart, Sarah, John, you want to add anything else to that?
I think we're on almost parallel or identical speaking paths when we talk about the integration of what we need to do technologically that doesn't outpace the human capacity to think. The American Fire Service has been just absolutely absorbed in aggressive interior fire attack. And that has taken and driven people to almost put it into a corruption of concept where you act first, think later. And that's led us into trouble. It's gotten us there. And if you're not taking the time to absorb the data, which is the signs and symptoms of what's going on when you arrive, you are going to put yourself in harm's way. So I think teaching people to concentrate on making sure their reality matches up with the reality of the situation and is not what they think it is, then we'll end up with better outcomes. And we'll be more intentionally successful in what we're doing, because at the end of it, one of the things that NFFF promotes is the after action review. We talk about what we did and actually clinically assess, did we get out of that event because we did all the right stuff on purpose, or did we get out of that event because we were just lucky?
Thanks, John. I mean, I had a hour-long conversation yesterday with Gary Breeze, previous past president from IFC, and John, he had mentioned that he worked with you for quite some time. But, you know, he kept harping on all this technology. Yes, it sounds great in theory, but if we are not actually solving a root problem, and most importantly, if we are not helping first responders make better decisions, then it's all for naught. And I mentioned this at the earlier beginning of my conversation that I want at TSI, we want this to be a forum. And Nan, if we can maybe pull up the slide and we'll finish up here in a few minutes. But TSI is meant to have the conversations to be able to where, how can we understand better the fire service better than it understands itself, by being able to understand some of these nuances so we can look to find ways to integrate technology to support public safety in a very thoughtful and real, authentic manner. And it's not meant to, again, just be the silver bullet that solves all these problems. But that's something that I want us to come to TSI. I want us to talk about technology change management. We want to, I challenge you all to be there to talk about the technology adoption curve, to talk about not just integrating tech because it sounds cool, but is it actually solving a problem and for what reason? And so we're very fortunate to have some of the entrepreneurs there, industry stakeholders. And again, we'll have more of these sessions at TSI, but to kind of give every one of our speakers sort of a final mic drop opportunity. And this is sort of you can talk for 10, 30 seconds on whatever. But, you know, any sort of final comments that you want to leave us with here today, a comment, a quote, a question. I often do this at the end of my podcast, but here I am doing it at the webinars. Any sort of final mic drops from our speakers here today. I won't call on anyone, but if anyone wants to go first, the floor is yours.
I'd like to comment on what John said on did we get lucky. I think the conversation on how to use all this technology responsible should be held before we figure out we just got lucky and we didn't implement it right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to have it put in as succinct terms, think first, then act.
It's not a mic drop moment. It's more of a, you know, I'm really curious to learn about what is holding you back. Because maybe the answers lie within.
And for me, I would just echo a comment I made earlier is, what are you doing to invest in the future of the next generation? And what successes have you found to make change in their department that you could apply to technology in innovating for those who are really trying to, you know, operate in a safe and efficient way, and be able to encourage those who are not open to change to make that next step, whether it's small.
Thank you all for those powerful and insightful comments here to finish. And agree, Si, it's not quite a mic drop. And frankly, the ball keeps bouncing. This is a webinar. TSI is coming up in a couple of weeks. It'll be an epic 2.5, 3 days of content, but the ball keeps bouncing 365 days a year. And I challenge and urge all of you to keep moving, keep pushing forward on all these things. Reach out to me, reach out to the IFC. And if you are working to create technology in some capacity to help first responders solve real problems and help make better decisions, and if you're a startup, you're an entrepreneur, you're a student, whatever it may be, reach out to me directly if you want to talk more specifically about it as it's leading up. But you're going to have more individuals like everyone you heard from today on stage, main stage, and breakout sessions. So just on behalf of the IFC, I thank you all for giving us your time today for an hour, and just keep moving fast, keep moving strong. And we're really excited to see some of you in Irving, Texas here in a couple of weeks. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.